Welcome to Cycling Australia's coverage of the National Road Series. It's the Battle Recharge, the first tour of the season for 2018. Three-day tour, 4 stages, and we're in the Tweed Valley. Murwillumbah for the final stage. It's a criterium, over 32 kilometres for the men. I'm joined by Robbie Hucker, man that loved a criterium in his day, but perhaps if it was on the dirt in a mountain bike, would have been even better.
Yeah, certainly would have.
So the racing has already started for the men. We saw the women's race just previously, the final stage of the criterium. We can tell you what happened this morning, though, stage 3 time trial. And quite an interesting result. Raphael Freiberg from Inform Make getting the win over 9 kilometres by 1 second to Cam Bailey from Benelong Swiss Wellness. Incredibly close. Aidan Tuvey, who was the overnight race leader, came away in 3rd place, but only 2 seconds further back. The big story of the day, though, the man that was tied on time with Aidan Tuvey, Ryan Kavanagh, crashed during the time trial and has completely bummed out of the overall classification. So disaster for Ryan Kavanagh. He didn't get his opportunity to go head-to-head against Aidan Tuvey. So Tuvey now sits alone at the top as the overall race leader, 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of Raphael Freiberg and Oliver Martin, a Tasmanian that surprised in stage 2 by winning the stage. He's up in 3rd place at 1 minute and 9 seconds. So Aidan Tuvey looks comfortably in the overall lead, and you would expect in this final time trial that he should be able to go on to get the overall victory. Still plenty to play for, though. We just saw Georgia Baker win the women's race, and now we're into the live pictures with the men's final stage time trial here, the Battle Recharge. We're in Murwillumbah. It's the Stan Brims Criterium course. It's over 32 laps, 1.4 kilometre circuit, and 25 laps to go. So we're 7 laps in to the final stage here, the Battle Recharge, the criterium in Murwillumbah. And we have seen from the women's race, very fast flowing course. It's virtually a figure 8 in configuration, but they don't technically cross over. They get to the same point around about in the middle of the circuit, and they come back in both directions. So another attack on the marks here. So one rider just out in front, followed by 2. And we've got 3 intermediate sprints, 3, 2 and 1 seconds up for grabs. We saw Georgia Baker in the women's criterium win all 3 intermediates and then go on to win the stage overall. She won the sprint classification and everything on offer in the final criterium. But it was Grace Brown that came away with the overall victory, dominant performance. So very similar to what we're seeing with the men's in terms of the overall class. One rider clearly out in front, virtually unbeatable in the final stage, barring a mechanical or a mishap. And with the men's, Aidan Tuvey in the same situation, 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of a cluster of riders that are all stacked up in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, etc. Now this is the middle of the circuit. There's a roundabout here. This is where the pits are as well. The final corner for the riders. They flick through this left-hander and then uphill to the finish. Very short, sharp finish, but wide open roads, which technically, Robbie Hucker, makes it easier to sit in the peloton, and you don't necessarily have to be so desperate about being in the top 10 or 15 because there's plenty of room on this particular circuit to manoeuvre.
Yeah, that's right. You saw it in the women's race earlier this morning, Scott, how bunched up it was, and you can see the same here in the men's. It's quite unusual to see this big of a field in a criterium. Normally it's strung out in one long line. But like you say, it makes it much easier to move up. You can sit back in the peloton and kind of keep an eye on what's happening and save much more energy.
Sitting on the back of the bunch there is Suryadi from Indonesia. And good to see an Indonesian team in the race, 4 riders. And they had one rider in Aman Kayadi who was significant in the road stages, very strong. And then disastrous for him on stage 2 in the breakaway group approaching the finish, and snapped his chain. And they didn't have a spare bike, so he wasn't able to complete stage 2, which is really unfortunate for him. But great to see another country represented here. Always see lots of New Zealanders, but the Indonesian team, not just here riding around, with a rider like Kayadi, they've got someone that could potentially go into the World Tour in the future.
Yeah, that's right. And he looks like a small type of guy too, so he probably would have went up that last climb pretty well. You just never know now with the unfortunate mechanical, but he's got another chance here today.
So if you have just tuned in, Ryan Kavanagh, who was equal on time going into Stage 3 time trial this morning. Had a crash in the time trial and ended up finishing 3 minutes and 32 seconds down after the crash in the TT. So really disappointing news for him. He was really hoping to go head-to-head against Aidan Tuvey in the time trial to see who was going to come out as the overall victor. For now, it looks as if Aidan Tuvey has it all wrapped up to himself. 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of Raphael Freiberg in second place. Oliver Martin from Tasmania sits in third, 7 seconds behind Raf. And then Ben Van Dam, a couple of more seconds behind him, 1 minute and 16 seconds behind in fourth place. So Benelong Swiss Wellness, they won the first of the National Road Series rounds, the Grafton to Inverell with Nathan Elliott. They're looking as if it's all going to go to plan here as well and pick up the second round. So picking up where they usually leave off. They win the National Road Series overall. They've been so dominant in the last decade, and starting 2018 just as they have every other year in dominant form.
Yeah, that's right. Look like they're well in control. All the riders here at the front just controlling what's happening in the break. They're not obviously wanting to let anyone on GC go, even though Aidan Tuvey has quite a big lead. You still would just rather be safe and keep an eye on those guys that are close to him on GC.
Well, Raf Freiberg winning the Stage 3 TT over 9 kilometres, only by 1 second, but did that surprise you? We know that Raf is a handy sprinter. He's a handy all-round type of rider. He won the German Hill Climb Championship last year and short 9K time trial. That was a great ride.
Yeah, even himself, he said in the post-race interview that he was surprised. But when you look at the time trial, the course changed a little bit. So it was just a number of small efforts, repeatable efforts. So and that type of effort really suits Raf. He's got the ability to have much, strong power over short periods of time, and obviously he's got good condition, so he can recover from those efforts.
Yeah, good point, because the time trial course did change at the last minute. It did go along the Tweed River from Wollongbar. It was basically straight out, turn around, straight back. But at the far end of the course, there was some sugarcane harvesting that was potentially going to happen, and the race organisers didn't want to upset the local farmers, and they've had floodings through this area in recent times, so they really are doing their absolute best to make sure that the local farmers are not interrupted in any way. So they changed the course slightly and turned it into virtually a Y shape. He went out a little bit, veered left, went up and did a U-turn, came back to the really tight right left-hander and went up again to do another U-turn to come back to the finish. So a Y-shaped course, virtually tripling the difficulty of the nature of the course. Rather than just one turnaround point, they ended up having 3. So far more difficult and technical than it previously was, and that certainly suited Raphael Freiberg. 11 minutes and 53 seconds it took him, 1 second ahead of Cameron Bailey, and Aidan Tuvey was third this morning, just to confirm the form that we saw on the road stages that has taken him to the overall race lead. Jordan Kirby was the one that was somewhat interesting, perhaps not that surprising. The former world individual pursuit champion finished 6th in the time trial, 15 seconds behind, but his form's not great at the moment. He has just come back from a Fiji holiday, so walking the sands of Fiji and a bit of sand between the toes hasn't translated to good time trial form for him, because on paper, surely he was going to win that time trial, but coming straight from Fiji, sipping cocktails in the pool perhaps wasn't suited to training.
Yeah, that's right. But I think I'd still be pretty happy with that. If I was 6th in individual time trial after a week in Fiji, having cocktails by the beach, I'd be pretty happy with that.
It does show how good he is, isn't it? He's only 15 seconds off, but coming straight off a holiday. Now the attack's coming thick and fast here as well in the men's race. Very fast. You can see all the Benelong Swiss Wellness boys all lined up, making sure they look after Aidan Tuvey. And they've got a couple of options here for the final sprint. Anthony Giacopo, known fast finisher. You throw Michael Freiberg in as well. That combination of lead out to sprint would be very, very dominant if they can get a clear run on that final lap.
Yeah, that's right. Giacopo's been a national criterium champion before. And an ex-teammate of mine, I know how good he is in criteriums. And like you say, with Michael Freiberg as well, a terrific lead-out man, normally leading out Scotty Sunderland. But yeah, Michael Freiberg will be hard to come around in a sprint, let alone as a lead-out man.
Now, what's your plans, Robbie? What have you got coming up next? Now, you're riding for the Japanese team, and if people were tuning in yesterday, they would have heard it all. But for anyone tuning in just for this final stage now, it's an interesting squad that you've ridden for in Japan.
Yeah, that's right. So I was with what now is the Benelong Swiss Wellness Cycling Team. I'm now with Team Yukio, a Japanese continental team, owned by former Formula One driver Yukio Kariyama. So we just focus really on the Asian UCI Asian World Tour. So my next race isn't until September. So I've got a bit of time now at home, which is good. So yeah, I've had a bit of a break, and now working with my coach Mark Fenner at FTP Training. We're just looking to build up towards my next goals later in the year.
I can tell you after the first intermediate sprint, Connor Murtagh picked up the 3 points and the time bonus. Jordan Kirby, who we were talking about, he was second across the line. And Ben Andrews was third, picking up 1 point and 1 bonus second as well. How's the boss go on the bike? Former F1 driver, have you been out on the bike with him?
Yeah, I've done a few rides with him. He's still very fit. He lives not far from Mount Fuji, and he's quite adventurous, and he's been known to ride up there after work in the dark. So anyone that's been up Mount Fuji knows how hard it is, and he's a regular up Mount Fuji.
Well, that's a regular stop on the Tour of Japan, isn't it? Mount Fuji time trial, really tough.
Yeah,
Ben Dybel, he had the fastest time up there.
Yeah,
stage.
Yeah, that's a perfect stage for Ben. Yeah, it's a brutal climb. Yeah, not something that you just go and do midweek in the dark.
We've got our own Mount Fuji here in the Tweed Valley. Mount Warning, not quite as spectacular. It's not snow-capped, but extinct volcano that they've been racing around the last couple of days. Great for bushwalking and hiking. Very scenic part of Australia, the Tweed Valley. And we're in Murwillumbah now. This is the Stan Bream's Criterium course. It's an industrial estate in Murwillumbah. Different final Criterium course than what we've seen in previous editions the last couple of years. Not quite as hard. They had a nasty little hill and very fast finish in the previous crit course they used to use. A little bit closer to town. This one's just outside, new industrial estate, big wide roads, so plenty of room to manoeuvre, plenty of opportunities once it does bunch up then to come around the outside as well. So perhaps not as important to be right up in the normal position you'd need to be if you want to stay in contention. One of the Oliver's Real Food Racing riders now on the attack. Oliver's Real Food Racing have... Oh, and there's an issue. This is the roundabout in the middle of the course, and we've seen a couple of times where the big bunch coming around, they get wider and wider and wider. So no one went down there. I thought when he flicked around with the camera, he was trying to pick up a rider that was on the ground. So you can see this is the pits area, the big roundabout in the centre of the course that they come through from both directions. And just a bit of a narrowing of the bunch. And there's that final sprint up to the line, slightly uphill. Oliver's on the attack. So Nick White from Oliver's, he has won the mountain classification. Ryan Kavanagh equal on 6 points. They have given the overall win to Nick White from Oliver's. Kavanagh, of course, rides for the St George racing team, St George Continental team, but he came to this tour entered as an individual. So Jack Sutton, it is, the South Australian 24-year-old that's off the front. He's the South Australian road champ from 2017. Stocky-looking lad. Looks like he could be well suited to a bunch sprint, but looking as if he wants to go on the attack. And a couple of riders now joining him. AMR Renault in the mix now as well. Nero KOM Financial Advice it is. It's Ty Jones, youngster from Queensland, 18-year-old. A lot of young riders, a lot of teenagers throughout the field, isn't there? Some 18s and 19-year-olds, and that's what it's all about. The National Road Series, it's such a great development pathway for the next generation. They come and mix it here and see if they think they've got what it takes to go to the next level, and hopefully they get themselves into a team like Benelong Swiss Wellness, or as we've seen in the past, the previous National Under-23 development program, and perhaps then onto the World Tour afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Like you see the likes of Jack Haig, Chris Hamilton, all these Australian guys that now you see on TV winning big races overseas, all come out of the National Road Series. So without that support and infrastructure, these young guys have nowhere to really show their talents and and stuff like that. So it's good to see that the National Road Series is still going, and now we're seeing the live stream, which is a first, really, isn't it? So it's a new thing for them, so it's great.
Oh, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So Campbell Pithy, New Zealander, riding for Team McDonald's Down Under, joins the 2 riders out in front. So 3 riders now looking to work well together. And Mobius Bridgestone Racing Team, they've just possibly delivered another rider into the World Tour. Wait and see. But Alexander Evans, the Bendigo rider you train with often in Bendigo, has just got himself a stagiaire position in BMC Racing. So we'll see if that leads to something for next year. And now we know that BMC are joining with CCC, so they will continue in somewhat as a team. There may be an opportunity for Alex Evans. Freddie Ovett has also come on as a stagiaire for that squad as well. He was registered with the ACA, Australian Cycling Academy squad. So 2 young Aussies been given an opportunity to ride for BMC for the last part of this season. So we did hear the whistle when they came through that time. So the second of the 3 intermediates coming up. First one taken out by Nick White. The first one taken out by Connor Murtagh from Mobius Bridge Lane, ahead of Jordan Kirby and Ben Andrews. But it's Nick White and Ryan Kavanagh that sit equal on 6 points each. And with the gap that we're seeing now to the peloton, this next intermediate will be mopped up by the breakaway trio. Oh, they've got to be careful through there, haven't they? It really does narrow. They come in wide, big wide road, but it's the exit. They're all sort of drifting to go out straight into those witches' hats. Yeah,
it's the funnel effect. Like you say, everyone goes into it 5 or 6 wide, but you can only go through the corner 3 wide. So someone's got to break and someone's got to give up their position, and that's when the crashes happen. When 2 people are late to do that, that's when the crashes happen.
So Oliver's Real Food Racing represented in the breakaway group with Jack Sutton, a 24-year-old from South Australia. Also Nero KOM Financial Advice is there with rider number 102, Ty Jones. He's a young Queenslander, only 18. And Team McDonald's Down Under. They have Campbell Pithy, a New Zealander that's made his way across the ditch. They've got 2 New Zealanders in their team, Team McDonald's. So Nick Miller and Campbell Pithy, the 2 Kiwis that join the bunch of Queenslanders that make up the rest of their particular squad. So Queensland-based team, Team McDonald's Down Under, represented in the break, final stage here of the Battle Recharge, the second round of the National Road Series for the men, but the first tour after having ridden the first round, the Grafton to Inverell back in May. Now you would have raced the Grafton, I would imagine. How many times?
Yeah, I've done it twice now. Twice? Yeah, yep. It's
a tough one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Very long. It's one of 2 really long races in Australia. I'm from Victoria, so we always grow up thinking that the Melbourne to Warrnambool is the toughest one-day race in Australia.
I like how you started that with knowing.
Yeah.
Knowing it is. Yeah, but is it?
Yeah, that's right. It's not until you go and do the Grafton that you realise that it's not.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely the longest, most prestigious, but the Grafton's harder. Absolutely. Yeah. It's tough. The worst part about it is you go up Gibraltar Range, you've got this massive long climb, and normally you climb for the descent. You look forward to some respite and you go on the descent. There's no descent. You're just climbing up to a plateau. There's no reward for climbing the Gibraltar Range.
No, not at all.
This is the last corner once again, and it's the Bennelong Swiss Wellness boys on the front, just controlling things. They're not desperate to close this one down. They will be certainly looking to go for the stage win with either Giacoppo or perhaps even Michael Freiberg, but the 32-year-old West Australian Giacoppo has been a proven performer in sprint stages of the National Road Series in the past. Of course, they also have the overall race lead with Aidan Tuvey, 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of Raphael Feinsteins, but they may be able to get the double, pick up the final stage with their sprinter and also pick up the overall classification with Tuvey. It's the youngster now on the front, 18-year-old Queenslander, Ty Jones, Nero KOM Financial. running men's and women's squads. So good to see. Jack Sutton, 24-year-old from South Australia. So last year's South Australian road champ. His best result in the National Road Series event was 5th in the Tour of Great South Coast, 2017 in Stage 3. So 5th in a stage of the NRS, but pretty handy in the state champs. So looking to try and come away with something of quality out of this particular stage here. It's going to be tough. 3 riders, you're better off having a couple of guys out there to work with, so they've got a chance to keep the pace up. But just the strength of the peloton and the speed on a fast-flowing course like this that peloton can produce, it's going to be challenging to hold them off.
Yeah, that's right. Like you say, with so many strong teams back in the peloton, Bennelong will be really happy with this. Only 3 guys, they can control it. It stops the attacks back in the peloton, and they can defend the overall with Aidan Tuvey, and then, like you say, with setting up the sprint for either Freiberg or Giacopo. I think it suits Giacopo a little bit more, but we'll wait and see what happens.
Well, Ty Jones, the youngster, just swings off, the 18-year-old. It's his debut in the National Road Series. He's the current under-19 Queensland Criterium champion, so he finds himself off the front in the final crit here at the Battle Recharge. Only turned 18 the day before this race started, so would have been nervous as a 17-year-old knowing he was about to come into the National Road Series. He's far more mature now at 18.
Yeah. He certainly doesn't look like an 18-year-old, does he?
No,
he's quite a big boy.
He's a big unit for sure. Now, apparently, he's the best surfer in the NRS. So allegedly the best surfer in the NRS, Ty Jones, the youngster, 18-year-old from Queensland, riding for the Nero KOM racing team. Not sure how we can challenge that claim though, Robbie.
Yeah, that's definitely up for debate, isn't it? With no surfing events in the NRS. It's I can't surf myself, but I'm sure he's a little bit better than me. But
13 laps to go, and I am hearing that that could be part of the Omnium. They're putting so many different events into the Omnium on the track now. Maybe they can have a surfing element to it. It's coming into the Olympics.
Yeah.
Skateboarding, surfing, free climbing as well. So rock climbing in the Olympics, certainly changing the way the Olympics is looking.
Some big splits happening here in the back of the peloton, isn't there?
Really starting to struggle. It looked as if they were comfortably cruising along in the back of the peloton, but that was Ben Cross, New South Wales rider from GPM Stutz. He was really having some trouble.
We talk about how wide and free-flowing this course is, but there's still people getting those corners wrong every time.
They are coming around here every lap. They've had plenty of practice. They know what's coming up, and it always amazes me when they know what's about to happen and they still allow it to. Bizarre.
Yeah, a bit more fatigue in the legs and not thinking clearly. That could be a recipe for disaster.
That was a diplomatic way of putting it, Robbie. 32 laps at the start, down to 13 now, coming around to get 12 to go. Final stage of Battle Recharge. 3 riders off the front, and one of the Brisbane Continental team riders now just trying to sneak away as well. The pace has really come on though. You can see how strung out it is, and the gaps towards the back just starting to open up a little bit. A few riders getting dropped already. Brandon Conway, MTOS Man Pack Racing Team from New South Wales, just starting to lose contact. Inform make out the back for him as well. So the second intermediate sprint, Ty Jones, the youngster, he picked it up in front of Campbell Pithy and Jack Sutton. They're the 3 riders in the breakaway group that mopped up the points in the second intermediate. One more intermediate sprint to come. strong ride from Brisbane Continental. He's not really going away, but he's just maintaining that gap of 10, 15 metres off the front of the peloton.
Yeah, that's right. He's certainly keeping the pressure on. And like you say, the peloton's not going along slowly.
They have a rider up in the overall class. 23-year-old Tasmanian Oliver Martin sits in 3rd place. Took us a bit by surprise, I've got to say, yesterday. We didn't see any footage at all. It cut out, unfortunately, in those closing sort of 8 kilometres or so, and we hadn't heard where Oliver Martin was. He seemed to come from nowhere, picked up the stage win, so great ride from him. From all reports, the final of Stage 2 was fantastic over the last hill, and the scramble 2.5k descent down to the finish line. Another lap completed, wind coming across slightly, but the straights are so short that even if it was open and exposed, you'd be out of the wind pretty quickly. It would just be that lap after lap effect where you need to be in good position regardless of how short those straights were.
Yeah, that's right. You really don't want to be any further than 20 wheels back. If you're thinking about the stage finish, you want to save as much energy as possible. Stay close up to the front. You don't want to be closing gaps when people are getting dropped or not going through the corner as well as the people in front. So yeah, definitely riding at the front, saving as much as energy as possible is definitely going to help you for the finish.
So one more intermediate sprint to come. 3 riders still off the front. Jack Sutton from Oliver's Real Food Racing. You can see the gap really starting to come down now. He's out there with Ty Jones from Nero KOM Financial Advice. And Team McDonald's Down Under, the Queensland outfit, have their New Zealander Campbell Pithy out there as well. But the gap really starting to close down, and no doubt the peloton's been strung out these last few laps. So for sure, that gap's coming back. A few of the McDonald's boys sitting at the back. Wonder if they'll be going through the drive-through on the way home.
Discount card, you think?
That could be dangerous.
Yeah,
detrimental to your form if you use that too often. Keep up to date with all the action throughout the National Road Series in 2018. Make sure you follow all of the social media accounts. Facebook, you'll get your notifications for the live streaming for all the events to come. Instagram, you'll get your lovely pics. And on Twitter, you'll get your live race updates. So Nat_Road_series on Twitter. And if you can't get to a screen to see the live streaming, or if the live streaming's not on yet, make sure you follow it through Twitter. Really strung out now. Only one more intermediate sprint to come. Brisbane Continental, Mobius, Bridge Lane on the mix as well. And the exit of that corner really does come down, doesn't it? The criterium course they had last year, there was a nasty crash in that one as well last year. So far, we've had a couple of incidents, but both men's and women's races have gone through without anybody touching the tarmac. We saw a nasty crash, Stage 2, road stage, yesterday. They neutralised Stage 2. There was a breakaway group of 4 that were up the road. They didn't have too much of a lead, but back in the main field was a very big crash, and last year's overall winner of the Battle Recharge, Brendan Davids from South Africa, went down nasty and really hurt his shoulder. Reports were he dislocated his shoulder, was able to pop it back in on the road, and then get back into the race and finish the stage. So they bred him tough in South Africa.
Yeah, that's right. I saw a photo of it on Instagram, and it didn't look nice at all. He's done well just to finish the stage and line up here again this morning.
His girlfriend won the stage 2 for the women. Brendan Davids won the tour overall last year. It'll be his teammate Aidan Tuvey that should take it out this year, though, with that convincing lead of 1 minute and 2 seconds. Barring a crash or a mishap, Tuvey should pick up the overall classification win. And then we come down to just the stage results. We heard the whistle as they went through that time. So the third and final intermediate sprint is up for grabs. 3 riders still off the front, but the peloton is really starting to bring it back. Ryan Kavanagh is equal on points in the sprints class with Aidan Tuvey, both on 9 points. Connor Murtagh, after picking up the first intermediate, is up on 8 points, and it looked as if that could have been Connor from Mobius Bridge Lane, just off the front again, trying to sneak away to pick up another 3 points in the sprint competition. One of the Indonesian riders sitting on the back, Suryadi. Ayman Kayadi is the name to really look out for. He showed some incredible form in the first 2 stages riding for the Indonesian team. So Kayadi is someone to look out for in the future. Hopefully they'll spend a few more races here in the National Road Series, Robbie. Good to see that international flavour. And with what Kayadi showed us in those first 2 stages, he's a real chance to win one of these.
Yeah, it's unlucky for him yesterday with the broken chain. I would have loved to have seen him go into that final climb with Connor in the front.
They've just gone up over the finish line for that 3rd and final of the intermediate sprints. And we've got a mechanical problem from one of the Bennelong riders there.
Looks like Michael Freiberg to me.
The big unit, Michael Freiberg.
Mechanic extraordinaire, photographer Neil Walker there on standby.
Is he better as a photographer or a mechanic?
He's pretty good at both, actually, yeah.
So the big unit, Freiberg, the former Omnium World Champion. There it is, Michael Freiberg. Looks like a small bike, but he is a very big unit. And he will be crucial in that final lap lead-out for Anthony Giacoppo. Freiberg, 27, won the Omnium World Championships a long time ago. We gave him the nickname Mr. Supercrank because he was a physics student, and he's got an incredible power hub that we'll talk about in a sec perhaps as well. But he would ride on the track with 200mm length cranks, get them specially made. He worked out all the science. Big, tall guy, he wanted to ride big gears, so he rode these massive cranks and then went into the national team pursuit squad, and the coach immediately said, get those off. You're riding the crank length that I want you to ride. And there was friction straight away. There's been an attack after that intermediate sprint, though. So a group now going off the front, 6 riders just ahead of the Bennelong Swiss Wellness-led peloton. Freiberg not back in the race yet. He has had his lap out, changed the wheel, so he'll get comfortably back in before the cut-off of 3 laps to go. So after the 3rd intermediate sprint, we can check the intermediate points, and it was Nick White that came away with 3 points and the time bonuses to come with it, ahead of Ryan Thomas and Jordan Kirby. So Kirby, while not on great form, has still been in the mix in both the 1st and 3rd intermediate sprints, just showing the ability that he has off the back of being on a holiday. Certainly has some incredible form. Flurry of attacks now.
Ryan Kavanagh, by the looks of that.
Disastrous for him this morning in the time trial. He was hopeful of going for the overall win and then crashing in that 9K TT. It's virtually gifted Aidan Tuvey the overall classification win. And we'll never know now who was going to be the better time trialer of the two. Tuvey himself, 2 seconds off the win in the time trial. It was a great ride by him, so it would have been an extraordinary performance from Kavanagh if he was to get the better of Tuvey.
Yeah, that's right. They've both had a good tour. Unfortunately, Kavanagh has had a crash in the time trial, like we've just said. And we spoke about how unlikely it would have been to come into today's day of racing, Kavanagh being able to contest the win. It really looked like that could have been, with yesterday him finishing in the lead group, not losing any time. Aidan Tuvey obviously getting the leader's jersey, but still being on the same time as Ryan Kavanagh. Would have been great to see him, but those 2 guys both on the same time coming to this criterium. Would have been make for some interesting viewing.
Well, Nick White finishing in that 2nd intermediate sprint in 1st place, picking up the 3 bonus seconds. That has him sitting in 6th place overall at 1:17. The 2 riders in front of him, Ryan Thomas and Ben Van Dam, are at 1:16 behind the overall class. So he's now only 1 second of getting himself up into 4th place from 6th. If he can finish in the stage results and pick up a time bonus, he might be able to leapfrog a couple of guys in front of him.
Yeah, and he's a fast finisher, Nick, isn't he? He's proven it before. So that would be definitely their objective for Oliver's. They'll be looking to control that and have Nick go for the final sprint.
So Kavanagh it is, still in the mix, trying to do something, getting some redemption after crashing out in the time trial this morning, finishing 3 minutes and 32 seconds behind the winner, Raphael Feinstein, in that 9 kilometre time trial. So disaster for him in the TT. But this shows the character. We've seen it so many times with Ryan Kavanagh. You know, the odds are against him or something goes wrong. He just gets out there and has another crack.
Yeah, that's right. He's tough. No teammates, doesn't matter. He just gets out and has a go.
So the closing laps now for the men. The final stage, stage 4, battle recharge, round 2 for the men of Cycling Australia's National Road Series. 4 riders off the front working very well together as well. And look at that formation. We've seen it so many times in the past in their different colours and sponsorship paraphernalia, but it's Bennelong Swiss Wellness. Been around for a long time now under different sponsors' names, and they've spent so many kilometres on the front of the peloton in the National Road Series. Mitchell Maycock from Queensland sitting on the back in the all black colours, the man in black. Black colours in Australian cycling, if you look at national championships, have been made fairly famous by Troy Herfoss, motorbike rider that's popped across into cycling and performed very, very well. Extraordinary ride around the Buninyong circuit last year at the National Champs. Bennelong just holding that gap now, not needing to close it down just yet and just making sure it doesn't go out too far. Still a challenge though, 4 guys, if they work well together, that's a strong combination of guys out in front. It will take a lot for Bennelong to close it down. Yeah,
that's right. Like you take out Michael Freiberg and Anthony Giacoppo, they'll be going for the finish, so they don't have the whole team. Obviously with Aidan Tuvey in the yellow jersey, I don't think he'll be on the front, will he? So it doesn't leave too many of the guys to control the race. So it's definitely still open.
Tim Rowe, Scott Bowden, Cameron Bailey and Brendan Davids are the other. So all good, strong names, aren't they? We saw Cam Bailey second in the TT this morning by 1 second to Raf Feinstein, so he's on good form. He is on the attack as well, the closing stages of stage 2 over those 2 hills towards the finish. So the reports were coming in that Bailey was on the attack. Backed up that impression of form in the time trial by finishing second. 4 laps to go now. 4 laps remaining. 1.4 kilometre course here. It is known as the Stan Brims Criterium course. Stan Brims, a bit of a legend up in the Gold Coast region. When I lived up there, Stan was still racing in the vets back then, so great to see Stan still involved in cycling. We've had our 3 intermediate sprints. It hasn't shuffled the overall points classification too much, but it has given Nick White the opportunity to perhaps go up a little bit in the overall classification if he can finish in the first 3 of this stage and pick up the time bonuses. Look at just the adjustments as the guys, they come around so wide and then have to flick back in again. Sometimes the witches' hats themselves become the obstacle. They put them out to show where there's an obstacle, and you hit the witches' hat when you... If they didn't put it there, you would have missed it.
Yeah.
They'll come around to get 3 laps to go now. 32 kilometres, or 32 laps, I should say, sorry. 32 laps almost completed. And one of the riders just pulling out up in front here. So I don't know if you've done a job of chasing down. Looks like she's all back together now, though. So Bennelong Swiss Wellness doing what they've done so well in the past, closing breaks down to set things up for themselves. And let's see if they can finish it off. They've done a great team job so far, but now it comes down to pure speed. Ken Giacoppo, Ken Freiberg, can they do what they're hoping to do and go away with a stage victory? 3 laps to go. Freiberg, he can do it in a sprint. Giacopo is the one you'd expect to be the designated sprinter from Benelong Swiss Wellness. Raf Feinstein, who's sitting second overall, he's won sprint stages in the National Road Series in the past, criteriums like this as well. So he's a rapid finisher. Nick White, as we mentioned, another one to look out for. He's riding for Oliver's Real Food Racing. So Inform Make will be trying to set up Feinstein. Oliver's will be looking after Nick White. Benelong doing as what they're doing right now. And I'd like to see Jordan Kirby go on the attack the last couple of laps.
Late flyer. The pursuit man.
The pursuit man. If he can, we know his form's not great, but he's just such a talent. If he was unleashed, if he could unleash the power at the right time, he'd be a hard man to bring back.
I think that was him just spotted at the back there, Scott. So he's either suffering a bit or he's taking a very big flyer.
Giving a bit of distance. He's about to hit them. It'll take about 6 laps to get to the front from where he is now. And that will be out of time. The race will be over by then. So Jordan Kirby perhaps not got the form that we would normally see him go for a victory here. Great to see him still racing. I know he's very disappointed for missing out on the Tokyo Olympic squad after being involved with the Commonwealth Games on home soil, home track in Brisbane earlier in the year. But given the bad news that he was not going to be a part of that preparation going towards Tokyo, so just staying on the bike and continuing on, that's good in itself because he certainly has a lot to do in the future of cycling if he wants to keep committing. 2 laps to go. It's not going to be today for Jordan Kirby, not his day, not his tour, but he can really contribute to cycling in Australia if he really wants to keep at it. It's always the most nervous part, isn't it? The last couple of laps, all the teams trying to get their sprinters in formation. Really strung out now. Benelong Swiss Wellness boys all lined out on the front. They've got the horsepower. Davids, Bowden, Bailey, Freiberg, Rowe, Tuvey and Giacopo. And there's been an incident. Oh, big crash as well. A lot of riders gone down. And it wasn't the first riders that went through. That was all the Benelong team. So no one from the Benelong team. The pointy end of the peloton got round the corner.
Like we were saying earlier, it's crucial, isn't it, to be in that top 20, to stay out of these accidents.
Well, certainly not unexpected. We've seen it almost every lap on that particular corner. Very tight. And it's also caused a little bit of a split in the bunch there as well. So there's desperation for a lot of the riders. So no splits up towards the front there. So it was midfield where that crash had happened. So anyone that was really looking to go for the stage win was in front of that crash. 1 lap to go now. Peloton being led by Benelong Swiss Wellness. Their sprinter Anthony Giacopo, the 32-year-old veteran from the National Road Series. Western Australian, will it be his teammate? And also Western Australian Michael Freiberg doing the final lead out to set up Anthony Giacopo for the stage win? Or can one of the other sprinters within the National Road Series peloton come away with the victory? And the damage from that crash now, look at that, it's just blown the peloton apart. Avon Tuvey, he will come away now surely with the win. He's inside the final 3 kilometres anyway, so you'll get bunch time if anything happens on this last lap. So Aidan Tuvey will win the battle recharge by 1 minute and 2 seconds over Raffel Feinstein, depending on the points bonuses or time bonuses at the end. Everyone safely through that part of the course for the final time. The pace is certainly on. Benelong Swiss Wellness doing an incredible job now just to set up their sprinters. Can Inform Make for Raf Feinstein do something to try and get the better? What about Oliver's with Nick White? Here they go, just flashed around the last corner now. Who's it going to be? The final stage of the battle recharge. 4 stages over 3 days. And it's Tuvey himself. What a way to go out. Aidan Tuvey, the overall race leader, will extend his overall race lead by winning the final stage as well. Benelong Swiss Wellness, we kept talking up Anthony Giacopo on the boys, but they did the job for their overall race leader and winner, Aidan Tuvey. There were 2 other teammates just in behind there as well. So I think Giacopo and Freiberg were right there in the mix. But what a brilliant ride. Aidan Tuvey wins the overall tour. Really difficult road stages, did a great time trial, and then finished off with the criterium stage win. That's a brilliant performance.
Yeah, what a way to finish the tour. Obviously, you can see that he had a couple of teammates right up there in the top 5, which will mean that they've executed the lead out perfectly. For them to have a number of riders in the top 5, they've done a fantastic job.
Well, what a way to finish it off. Stage 1, Tuvey went up the road with Ryan Kavanagh. They finished on the same time. Kavanagh took the overall race lead on the same time because he finished in front of him by winning that stage. Stage 2, it switched. They came in on the same time, but Tuvey was a couple of places ahead of him, so he took over the overall race lead after stage 2, but still on the same time. And then a brilliant time trial performance to finish 3rd on the stage this morning for Tuvey. And Kavanagh, disastrous for him as he crashed out. And then Aidan Tuvey goes on to win the final stage to pick up the overall victory here at Battle Recharge. So what a performance from Benelong Swiss Wellness yet again. And Aidan Tuvey, it seems like every year it's the same team winning, but they're using different people to do it all the time. They've got such a great development and talent identification program. So it was Ryan Thomas that came across the line in 2nd place, and Nick White, who we had mentioned, was up there for 3rd as well. So there'll be a slight reshuffling of the overall classification. Nick White may, in fact, just jump up 1 placing because of the bonuses on offer at the finish. And he certainly could be very happy with that. But what a victory there it was from the man in the overall race lead. Aidan Tuvey, the youngster from New South Wales, gets the win over Ryan Thomas. Nick White comes across in 3rd. It was Raf Reinstein, who's the 2nd in the overall class, came across in 4th. Scott Bowden in 5th. Michael Freiberg it was in 6th. So it was actually Bowden, not Giacopo, that was in the mix. But here he is, the man of the weekend, Aidan Tuvey, the youngster. He set it all up on day 1 by getting in the breakaway group. And it was the time trial performance from yesterday that really consolidated where he was at and then went out in style by winning the stage.
People than what we thought, so it was a stacked finish, and then it just happened that I was the right place at the right time, and then if Freiberg came off my wheel, great. If not, yeah, still would have won.
Let's give the boys applause again from the time trial this morning. Matt Thompson, Sam Lutton, Benjamin Harlow.
Yeah, for sure. Like, as good as we have gone this tour, we haven't, until now we hadn't won a stage, so good to finish on a high, and yeah, full credit to the boys. They were awesome out there.
Just take us through the tour, so close in the opening stage there. Good 3 days for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a tough tour, this one, but yeah, thanks to the help of all staff and riders, and we got through unscathed, and relatively unscathed, poor Brendan, but he was a soldier and got back on the bike and kept going. But, yeah, good to finish on a high.
You've been a representative of Australia for Junior Worlds, and now obviously first NRS tour, and might take that leaders jersey at the NRS. Where's this rank?
Yeah, it's definitely up there. It's my first NRS overall tour win, so pretty ecstatic with that. And then, yeah, just sort of keep the ball rolling and see what we can do from there.
We'll see you at Tour of Gross Coast in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, brilliant performance there. Aidan Tuvey seemed non-fussed about it all. The team did a good job and he finished it off.
Yeah, that's right. It didn't sound like they were really going for him for the sprint. It was just a bit messy, and he came out on top.
Fighting for position, making sure he's in the right spot. So brilliant overall victory and final stage victory there to Aidan Tuvey. Raphael Freiberg finishes in 2nd overall ahead of Oliver Martin from Tasmania, who had a sensational stage 2 victory. He finished 3rd overall at 1 minute 9 seconds. Ryan Thomas stays in 4th place. Nick White jumped up to 5th. So by getting in the bonuses at the finish there, Nick White moved up 1 place, finished 5th overall. He also wins the King of the Mountain competition as well. And some consolation for Ryan Kavanagh. He'll take out the points classification as well after crashing out of the overall classification. So something there for Ryan Kavanagh, who must be disappointed with how things played out. But there's your official results from stage 4. Well, it says provisional, but we'll take it as official. Aidan Tuvey winning the final stage ahead of Ryan Thomas and Nick White. Raf Freinstein, who finishes second in the overall class, comes away with 4th in the final stage. Scott Bowden, former mountain biker, doesn't mind a bit of argy-bargy with the elbows out to come through in 5th as well. His teammate Michael Freiberg in 6th. And so some new names in there as well. Giacoppo was in the mix as well. So look at so many riders from Benelong Swiss Wellness, but a messy finish. Tuvey just made sure he was in the mix to go for the win.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. So it's no, you've got to have luck on your side, but you just can't have bad luck.
So another successful edition of the Battle Recharge, formerly known as the Battle on the Border. It's the first tour of the National Road Series this year. As we said, the men have already had the Grafton to Inverell. This is the first race for the women, but the first tour for both the men and the women for the 2018 series. The Tour of the Great South Coast is the next one up, and that's in 2 weeks' time, followed by the Tour of the King Valley, sponsored by Sam Miranda Winery. And there's what we will call official results at the end here. So Aidan Tuvey, after 7 hours and 51 minutes of racing, comes away with the win. 1 minute and 6 seconds with the extra bonuses from the sprint win at the end, giving that over Raphael Freinstein from Inform Make, and Oliver Martin from Tasmania coming across 1 minute and 15 seconds in the overall classification. So there's your top 10. Cameron Bailey rounds out the top 10. Brilliant ride by Benelong Swiss Wellness once again. Ryan Kavanagh, he's a name that's going to want redemption in the next few races in the National Road Series. So look out for Kavanagh as we go into the next few races, but certainly has been a fantastic weekend of racing. The Tweed Valley always delivers. The weather was on song, and the riders certainly performed very well. So Grace Brown, she takes out the overall victory for the first round of the women in the National Road Series, and it was Aidan Tuvey doing the likewise in the men. So brilliant performances from both of them, Robbie.
Yeah, both strong performances throughout the tour for the men's and the women's. Clear favourites, and delivered on the final result.
Now, but you're off racing in Japan now, so you won't get to be in the National Road Series at all, or will we see you maybe Melbourne to Warrnambool at the end of the year?
Yeah, potentially. I'd like to. It's a good race, that one. One of my favourites. So, yeah, we'll wait and see.
All right, well, good luck for you for your racing with the Japanese team throughout the Asian circuit, and good luck to everybody at home. Get on your bikes, get training, because we'll be back up in a couple of weeks for the Tour of the Great South Coast. That's all we have for you from the Battle Recharge. It's round 1 for the women this year of the National Road Series. It was round 2 for the men, and we're looking forward to the next event coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll see you then.